So you guys may have noticed that we did not keep good on our thing to keep good.
My friend Adam, by the way, went home to Belfast, and it's weird to have a friend who likes what I do. That does not happen,
That's
especially in Northern Ireland. But
it's too close.
Yeah, but he actually likes it, and I don't think he's liked anything I've ever done. So he likes it. But he was like, Pete, listen to that episode, and you were all like, you're just talking about you're going to get started. He said, I went through it because it's kind of weak episode. It's just about how you're going to get back into the game. Yeah, and then nothing. Then a month of nothing.
Absolutely nothing. Didn't even feel bad. Like I was like, okay, you're in Belfast. We did the thing where we were like, we're gonna do it remotely, and then we kind of, and it never happened.
Never crossed our mind. Basically, the moment that we finished that episode where we said we're gonna do this, we're gonna record an episode every day for a week, gone.
Absolutely gone. Didn't even remember it. And you guys have noticed, and I see your comments. It's very funny. People have commented on just like the immediate like. We just shouldn't. I know I should not say things I'm gonna do. Ever. Because who knows? But this was so brazen. It was so. I was so sure. I was like, we're back. Here we go. But we are actually back. Pete, welcome back to America.
Thank you.
Things are great here.
Yeah. I noticed. We're just going to do another episode about how we're going to get back into the game.
That's what's right. No, I was like, enough of that. Okay, content.
No, hold on. I put this on to hide that I was putting on weight over COVID, but I am getting too hot, so I'm going to take it off.
Oh, that's going to be way too hot. Yeah, but keep this in. This is good. This is good for the views. Very good sex appeal.
People like this kind of stuff.
Yeah, we're going to do an episode. This is The Fundamentalists, by the way. If you're new, my name is Elliott Morgan. I do internet and stand-up comedy. This is one of my best friends in the world, Dr. Peter Rollins, who's a philosopher and a theologian and a public speaker. Boom, right?
Boom.
This is a podcast about how to discover the possibility of life before death.
You see what we did there?
Because everyone seems to be not alive in life a lot, which I can certainly relate to, so maybe I should listen to this podcast every once in a while.
Might do you good.
Yeah, tell me about it. This episode is on sacrifice. So we did go through, let me tell you, let's talk about what we did do, right? And then I also want to ask how Belfast is and how it is in comparison to America. I'm very interested in it right now, and I think other people will be too. But before we dive into that, we did make good on part of the last episode that we did, where we did go through and come up with different topics that we each.
That's right.
And we made good on that yesterday. So we're good. And this particular episode is on sacrifice,
which is one of mine.
Stuff. Yeah, you have stuff lined up, and I have a bunch of stuff too that I think is going to be. We have a bunch of very, very cool subjects that we're going to talk about. That feels like
every week,
without
fail,
without
every Sunday,
it's
just going to drop.
And if we travel, we'll do it remotely.
Yeah, of course.
And so, but before we dive into all that, how was your trip?
It was great. I loved it. You know,
you were there for a long time.
Well, yeah, a month, but sometimes I go for 2. But it was great. My ideal is kind of half and half, or maybe 4 months in Ireland and the rest in LA.
Is that your ideal? That's the ideal, huh?
I think so, because it's about sacrifice, you know, and moving between the two. But I miss the greenery, and I miss the rain, and I miss being around old things like, you know, that you feel that have been around before you lived and will be there after you die.
Not things that'll get shut down, rebuilt, and turned into an apartment complex every day.
And yet there's something beautiful about the contemporaneity of LA, where
contemporaneity.
Contemporaneity. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it correctly. Just do it with confidence and you're fine.
Yeah,
new stuff. Yeah. Because then you don't feel, it also feels timeless. Like, people don't grow old here. I mean, your body grows old, but people are eternally young. So there is something beautiful about this kind of the new world.
It's
but
Peter
also
Pan.
about Europe, I love as well.
It's Neverland.
Yep.
No one grows up here. You get to stay in your little bubble, and then you get to be like, man, people are crazy on the outside. We have it figured out here in our LA bubble. I have no idea. But you had, in this particular trip, did anything fun or interesting happen? Was it just sort of like your standard go-to recalibrate?
Yep. And did some work while I was out there and that kind of thing.
Yeah, you were doing. What's that about? What's that for? It looked really cool.
Yeah, doing like a 6-part kind of introduction to my work. That's going to be part of a course. So that'll be happening soon.
Have you? I think you, and this is going to probably inflate your ego.
Oh,
and
don't
I'm okay
do
with
this,
that.
whatever it is.
But have you thought about, like, you had a very interesting life, and you have a very interesting body of work. We've talked about a documentary in the past. Have you thought about doing anything like that doesn't come off cringy?
Oh, yeah. Well, you know what? There is an idea for a documentary that Helen's going to do,
Cool.
potentially that we were going to try to record when I was in Belfast, where we've got 3 short films that are all about, funnily enough, all about sacrifice. And I'm going to potentially do talking between these 3 short films in the sets. Cool. So a little bit like Slavoj Žižek's Pervert's Guide to Cinema type thing, but these are shorts that were made specially. So that is going to be like a doc about, not about me, but about philosophy.
I've seen Making Love, and I've seen Mustard Seeds.
Which is called Alone now.
Yes. Better title, in my humble opinion.
It is very much a better title. It's called Alone, spelled with 2 L's.
All one.
All one. And we're all alone. We're all alone, and we're all one in our aloneness.
Yep. You love your words. You love your palindromes and your. Have you seen the final trailer for the movie Tenet?
No, but I want to see it. Is it a good trailer?
No, it's terrible.
Oh, no.
It looks so confusing, but it's very funny to see people like just ripping apart how Nolan-y it is, because it's just like it looks like the type of movie that is a palindrome. Like even the title is a palindrome, where probably like it'll connect to the beginning at the end, and it's going to be I don't know.
Like Arrival was very good on that. It played with time and temporality, like the best way I've ever seen a movie play with time.
I've been listening to the Elliott Universe by Brian Greene, dude, on Audible. And first of all, it's difficult as heck to understand what he's talking about, because he's talking about physics. This is a book about like string theory and all that stuff. Yeah. But I've understood enough of it to kind of wrap my head around certain parts of it. It is crazy.
Oh, yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what these physicists are doing or what they're messing with in these theoretical quantum stuff. It is like, you hear it's crazy, and in my mind, I'm like, no, this is just something that people, like, over-exaggerate. It's not that crazy. Yeah. And then he starts diving into it, and I'm like, this is bonkers. But anyway.
Yeah.
We're not talking about string theory, because I don't understand any of it. But I thought about with the time, with the stretching out, anyway, I'm all over the place right now. I think you should do a documentary. That's
Thank
all
you.
I'm saying. And the short films are great, but I need to see the third one.
Oh, Jamaica. Yeah, that's an early one that we re-edited. So,
Does it hold? Do you like it though? Is that your?
Yeah, it's good. It's very good. I wasn't really a part of that one at all, but but it's very, very good.
That should be what you say in the documentary. It's like, I don't really have anything. I don't know. This one's like,
but it's about. By the way, I'll just tell you what it's about. Right?
Yes,
it's
please.
about a kid who has a very unhappy family life, and he imagines Jamaica. He wants to run away to Jamaica, and basically the story is he tries to run. It's based on a true story of this kid, and he tries to run away to Jamaica, and basically discovers that there is no running away. And so it ends with him basically discovering that Jamaica is a type of fantasy that allows him to escape the horror of his life, but there is no ideal Jamaica for him to run away to. Yeah. So very happy stuff.
It sounds really cool and fun. Yeah. Check it out. Coming to theaters soon. Like Tenet. What are we talking about? What's your thoughts on the idea of sacrifice?
Yeah, so I wanted to talk about this because I'm doing a course at the moment, or a book study on this notion of ultimate concern, which is kind of the idea of there's not just things that we care about. There's not just like things we care about a lot, but there's also this dimension of life in which we are prepared sometimes to give everything to something, and that's an ultimate concern. It's not just like I like something or I really like something.
You submit. You bow down.
Yeah, give yourself to. Yeah. So and
devote your life.
Yeah, and this is a universal dimension. You find it anywhere.
Yeah.
Right. I can't call it the categorical imperative, or it's connected to that, this call, this sense that something demands everything from you. And the theorist Todd McGowan, who I'm going to be using some of his thoughts in this, so I'm just putting his name out there, but talks about
Play your bingo.
What's that?
Play your bingo.
Yeah, I suppose he's on the bingo card, is he?
It has to be. At least his book is. And if we're talking about sacrifice, we got to talk about it.
Well, he, explores how we think that we sacrifice for things that we love, but actually, in a way, we sacrifice towards love. Without sacrifice, there's no meaning. Without sacrifice, the world becomes one-dimensional and empty. And we, as human beings, require sacrifice. So it's not that you sacrifice for something, it's that in sacrificing, value enters the world.
Okay.
And I wanted to kind of explore that because there's a way in which in our contemporary life, not necessarily the last 6 months, but go back a little bit further, there's such a shallowness of culture that it's hard for people to find meaning. And so,
because we live in a postmodern, secularized, over-rationalized world.
Yeah, kind of like a profane world, and I mean that not in a bad sense, but a kind of secularized world where sacrifice is either seen as bad or disavowed. But by the way, hipster's a good example of a contemporary rebellion against this, right? So I was talking to there's a woman, Sarah, in the reading group, and she was talking about people who bake their own bread, and she was like, like in a world where you can get bread really easily anywhere, well, how do you bring value to bread? And you're gonna have to make your own,
right?
Or in a world where you can get any music anytime you want at the touch of a button, then the only way to bring value back to music is to get into vinyl and then go to secondhand stores and start to filter through. So in a way, the definition of a hipster is someone who lives within kind of a one-dimensional consumerist world and is attempting to bring value back to that consumerist world through reintroducing sacrifice.
Yeah, but I also think it's interesting that when like the hipster, because I'll do that, I love that stuff, and I'll make my own bread. It's all good because it's also, you'd get some fresh bread, you dip it in some olive oil and a little bit of whatever.
Yeah,
it's kind of the best thing.
But you know why? But you know what? The secret ingredient is the work you put into it.
The secret ingredient is crime.
Yes, that's a great Peep Show quote. So that's bingo card.
Yeah, we're becoming programs of ourselves. The whole vinyl thing of like you can just hear it, you can just smell it, and it's like physical books. Like you can have a Kindle, but I will want a physical book. And then you're like, oh, I like the weight of it, or I like the way this pages smell. And it's always something that is like fine, but not really. Like you don't really need you can still consume the book. Like you're just breathing in like processed paper basically, or old paper, but it has nothing to do with the words that are written in the book, just as the vinyl I don't imagine has anything to do with I'm not an audiophile, so I'm sure all that stuff does to a degree, but I think there's something to that. It's like you're actually just doing it so that you're investing in it.
There has to be some form of sacrifice, and this is why there's always money to be made, right? So in Silicon Valley or whatever.
Prove it.
But in San Francisco, whatever, like people are making money by making life easier, but there's always money to be made in making life harder. And once you see something becoming really simple, if I was into business, this is what I'd be looking at: is how do I make life difficult? Because in a world where transport is easy, then someone will want to get a penny farthing bike and ride to work and make it difficult. And the reason why in a world where everything, where the visionary entrepreneur is like, how do I make everything super easy for people? One thing they're robbing out of life is meaning. They literally are taking meaning out of life. So the vinyl secondhand bookstores, baking your own bread, all of that, I think is a frantic desire to reintroduce meaning into the world by reintroducing sacrifice.
Okay, I get that. I mean, to bring it back home to my limited experience, let's use exercise for an example. I don't like it. I don't like doing it. I think it sucks. If I do it for a while, get momentum, I can enjoy it and say I like it. But I like the effect that it has. Mm-hmm. But I would almost bet you it's not really the energy that I do it for, or the reason, or to look differently. It's probably because knowing that I put in time every day to do something like that makes me feel good. So it actually is about the amount of time that I spend, and it is a sacrifice of my time.
Yeah, absolutely. And
my own lazy impulses.
And the problem is within contemporary society, although sacrifice is there, we're told that it isn't there. You don't realize the sacrifice is in the work. You think the sacrifice, or you think the pleasure is in the perfect body, or someone thinks that the pleasure is in the car, right? They're sacrificing, they're saving up for this car that they really want, and they think the car is going to satisfy them, give them pleasure. But in a way, it's the sacrifice for the car. And not only the sacrifice.
It's the goal. You're serving.
Yeah, you're serving. So you're sacrificing. You have to save the money. You have to make the money, and also the sacrifice that it's cost for the car to be made. All of the sacrifice exists, but it's disavowed, right? You're told in society, no, if you get the car, you'll be happy. But you don't realize, oh, no, it's the sacrifice that makes the car a transcendent object. Hence, the car will always dissatisfy you when you get it. Whereas in religion, this is interesting, is ancient religion is designed partly, if you take someone like René Girard, is partly designed to show sacrifice, to actually reveal sacrifice, not hide it. So like Burning Man is a great example of like, because here sacrifice, sexuality and spirituality are always interconnected. And in Burning Man, you can see that, right? Burning Man, there's sacrifice, you're destroying things, you're destroying your body through drugs as well, and through body modifications and all these various destructive things one does, yoga. And then you...
Destructive.
Yeah, absolutely. Then also then...
Don't do anything as crazy as yoga.
Yeah, CrossFit, that's a very destructive thing for your body.
That's insane. Yeah. That's different than sacrifice. Yeah. That's a whole collective of... I mean, I'm sure it's great.
Yeah. But, But so you've got destruction in Burning Man. You've got sexuality, right, in Burning Man. And you've got spirituality. Because... that's what, like, the whole point of it.
Ritual,
and the whole point of festivals in religious times was about sacrifice. You literally killed an animal, not for money, not to use it. You just destroyed it. Like the point of festival was you need spaces in society where there isn't economic exchange. There is pure sacrifice.
Okay, all right. So what is I mean, I guess I'm a little lost in the sauce with this because... let's back up a little bit. If you're sacrificing for something, I mean, you're serving something. You are basically you're causing yourself discomfort or pain of some kind.
Are you serving? Like maybe that's the thing. You might be right, but you're not necessarily certain. Like sometimes people sacrifice in order to find something worthy of serving. So romance is a great example. You buy shit that doesn't mean anything. Yeah. But the sacrifice of money to buy, say, flowers, precisely because flowers have no real value. I mean, they're not even that.
But they're so pretty, though.
You know, are they really?
You could use some flowers in here.
I could use anything in here.
You could use some damn
in the
dust.
Cavernous space.
But I mean, flowers are pretty to look at. I feel like but the symbolic thing of like, here's flowers, they're as pretty as you are. That's all kind of, culture, I guess. But I was thinking about how when I was in the elevator, since we were talking about sacrifice, and I was like, I'm really tired of wearing these damn masks. And I was like, I know, like, you're not supposed to say that. Everyone, should wear a mask, blah, blah, blah. That's a very risky thing to say, crazy thing to say. But, it just gets inconvenient. And one day you're like, same with socks. I'm going to keep wearing socks. But some days I'm like, I don't like wearing socks. Mm-hmm. Some days I was like, I couldn't understand the thing that the guy was saying downstairs. And I was like, but you wear a mask because it's a sacrifice. And it's a minor inconvenience that you're making for the belief and the idea that, you can reduce the spread of a virus or whatever. So it's like, yes, everybody should do it. And then I was thinking about the people, specifically people that I know on Facebook and people who are the anti-maskers and that whole thing, which has become this culture war that is, we do a whole conversation on that, but I think it's fascinating. But I keep going back. I keep having this idea, this thought in my head, and I want to know what you think of it, because in my mind, I'm like, this is one of those clever things I'm thinking of, but maybe it's not at all. So you have, like, for example, in Florida, they just hit 10,000 deaths in the state. Crazy amount of people. Then I get online, and I see all this stuff that's, like, reducing the amount of deaths to, like, a statistical... small number. So it's like, okay, yeah, this many people die, but if you look at the overall population, and it's like absolutely no like empathy toward the fact that all these people have died, and they'll lean on the factual sort of rational statistical thing.
God, you're getting very into the very contentious things here.
I know, yeah, but whatever. I'm not.
Yeah.
Everyone knows my deal. I'm not trying to, just whatever. But I remember in 9/11 when those towers fell, and we just sent we started a bunch of shit after that, and sent a bunch of people, and sacrificed, I would say, quite a bit after 9/11 happened. That I personally didn't have to be sacrificed, but a bunch of young people were. A bunch of young people went overseas. And it seems as though that is a weird example of sacrifice being like distanced from the person, being like, okay, well, we're going to send these kids over there, and then they're going to die. And that's the sacrifice. But no one has to look at it. No one has to think about it. It's no big deal. Now that there's a minor sacrifice involved with wearing a mask, and I know this is me taking a stance on something, but whatever, minor sacrifice, all of a sudden people are like, oh, I can't, you're not going to step on my rights. Does that make sense?
It does, but I feel I'm very out of touch because I empathize but I also empathize with people who feel like that. But I empathize with both sides. That's my problem. Is I kind of get it that it's that there's a whole pile of symbolism, and
it's so wrapped up.
There's codes and
there's some weird, dude. I mean,
yeah.
There's so much being put on this whole conversation on both sides that it's like for sure difficult to talk about. But if you reduce it only to the sacrifice part, it's kind of an interesting thing that when the sacrifice is so minimal but so personal, people can't do it. But when the sacrifice is so grandiose but so far removed for a fraction of the amount of lives that have been lost, there's an interesting, I think, hypocrisy, I guess, a little bit there.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, for me, those are two very different things. I mean, the thing about masks for me, but I see if this relates or not, is that there's something about mask wearing that is symbolic of revealing your own lack, because you're basically saying, one is you could be infected and you can infect others, and so there is a kind of like acknowledgement of one's finitude.
Dude, I think truly this is my little crackpot idea that I don't think it means anything, but the fact that the word mask, it literally sounds like a castrated version of the word masculinity. There's something going on there.
Oh yeah, that's very interesting, because I think there's something to that. I do, and my guess would be that that men are less likely to wear masks than women. That would be,
and even the women who are less likely to wear it kind of seem to fall into that same sort of idea of being strong, being masculine. Yeah. Men don't do it. We're tough. We're American. We're that blah blah. But anyway,
and I'm not
trying to derail this into mask.
No. I think like that is something I have thought about, and I'm like, I do think that. And by the way, I find it difficult for that very reason, because I think that I, just purely on a personal level, disavow my own weakness. And so wearing a mask is a way of confronting me with my finitude, very, very subtly, but in a way that makes me a tiny bit uncomfortable.
Yeah, that is so crazy. That's such a funny thing to be like, yeah, the anti-mask thing is whatever you want to call it. There is like a thing that is so heavy where that is also very interesting. Yeah. Like we're all like, it's so easy to wear a mask, but then if you think about it, you're like, the reason you're saying that is because if they don't, they're gonna kill somebody. Yeah. And it's like that is death, and that is just reminding people of death constantly. Yeah. And that doesn't seem like it's fun. I don't know. Yeah. It's very interesting. Yeah. That's all I'm saying.
Well, yeah, but let's do an episode on mask thing. That's another thing we always talk about, is what we should do an episode on. But I'd love to jump into that.
I honestly think I've said everything I have to say.
I'm like, that's a mini episode. We can cut that.
Yeah, the masculinity thing I think sums it up. The finitude, the being reminded of your own thing, and then my own general not caring about most things all creates a cocktail. Being like,
yeah,
no hot takes here.
Yeah, very good.
But anyway, so that's sacrifice. That. Yeah, that's my thought on it when I was coming up here. It's like there is when you do it, you're sacrificing your own inconvenience, and it is what it is. Yeah. But for other people, it's not that. It's a signifier, and that's a whole other whirlwind of things.
Yeah, but yeah, you are right. Like sacrifice is all connected with this, with what we're seeing in various ways, and And I think often people are, I say, we're frantically attempting to bring meaning into the world. For me, it's not, it's like almost sacrifice is what creates the transcendental. So as an example, I think I've used this before, but people often think that they're jealous because they love. But what you often find is that people only sustain love because they're jealous. And so if you're able to help that individual work through their jealousy, they no longer love the person that they're jealous will be stolen away from them. So weirdly, as I say, from a natural perspective, it's like, oh, I'm jealous because I love. But where you go like, no, you're frantically creating jealousy in order to sustain love.
Yeah. I have jealousy issues, but I also think that, I'll do the thing where it's like, oh, it's, a little bit of jealousy isn't like the worst thing in the world. But I can also understand theoretically the idea of someone no longer having jealousy, and then in their mind they're like, well, that just means I have the thing, I have the person, I have the possession, I'm not jealous of, I'm not fearful of it, it is now wholly in my grasp, which would probably play into the, like, you save up for the car to satisfy, like the moment you think you have something, then you're going to be disappointed.
Yes. So the trick is, how do we maintain, like you're saying, like a little bit of jealousy is fine, is if you acknowledge it and understand it. So the problem for me is, the problem is not sacrifice, the problem is disavowal of sacrifice. The problem is when we don't acknowledge that sacrifice and is part of relationships and all that. If you don't acknowledge it, it comes and bites you in the ass. It always erupts. So if two people are very in a good relationship, everything's great, one person's going to fuck it up in order to bring sacrifice and destruction back in order to generate desire. So
you shit the bed.
You shit the bed. If you can't do it in a healthy way, you'll do it in an unhealthy way.
I've seen that. Nice. It is in the sacrifice thing, though, in terms of like giving of yourself, like, I mean, every little self-help book I've read in regards to,
and you've read a lot and they have not helped. You're the best. You're the best advert for not reading self-help,
dude. In a way, I'm the worst.
Well, except for the one.
You
on
see
alcohol.
My life?
Yeah, except for the one on alcohol, which worked. Well,
no,
it worked, but you've just finished.
Yeah, they're all fine. But I mean, I've read all of them, and I feel like I recommend it all the time. But I'm like a bad poster child for it because I feel like they worked it. It all worked just in a way that is, I wouldn't change it anything. I like it.
I gotta say, you've got a great life.
It's pretty good.
Things are pretty good.
Yeah, and which brings me back to the subject at hand, which is sacrifice. I don't know if I told you this. I did this is years ago. I did some mushrooms years ago. Yeah. And this actually was a long time ago, but I like broke down, and it was like a realization that I had like my career and my output creatively and everything have become so minimal, and I've put such a heavy like price tag on all of it and been like, this has got to do this and this, and I got to stay, but like something's been missing. And I think I relate to what
quality.
Yeah. Views.
Humor.
Talent.
The
list
goes on.
But I was like, I broke down because I was like, I need to be able to serve something, and I need to be giving up my sort of like level of comfort that I've lived with, which I'm doing in various ways. And it's interesting because, they're drugs are drugs, and they're not necessarily like anything good, anything bad. It's all about how you whatever. But it actually was like a really crazy moment that I did not expect, of being like, oh, I have this very cush sort of life in a very good situation. And I was like, I don't want to do this out of anything other than truly being like sacrificial, like being like, I want to work on something and create something that is like giving of myself. And not only do I want to do it, it felt like I needed to do that. It felt like a weird 30-something revelation where it was like, I can't keep, it's not, I don't want to keep focusing on Patreon numbers or reviews or anything like that. It's like, no, I want to know what it is that I'm standing for, which I think is pretty standard for this stage of development in life that I'm in. But yeah, it worked. And then since then, it's been a very interesting sort of series of developments that have happened where I haven't done it because of that experience. But when I look back on it, I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, something kind of shifted there a little bit, and going like, I need to start actually making sacrifice. Oh, what I was going to say about the self-help books, the idea, at least in that I've taken away from love or about love, is that it is always based in sacrifice. Like love, that's what the Love is a Verb song, DC Talk, wonderful, wonderful song. Just, it's not, don't worry. But it, like the idea that love is an action, love is a giving of yourself, love is like, you know, not worrying about what all your needs are. Maybe there's something there.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think that's absolutely great.
I went all over the map on that one.
No, and basically you're saying, and like you in a way had to sacrifice. You had to find a way to sacrifice in order to bring value back. That's what the drug experience kind of said to you.
And I mean, I won't go into the details of it because it was pretty intense. But I was by myself. I was just in tears. I was like, I'm missing the purpose a little bit, and I want to do so. I want to find something that is outside myself that is important enough to me. And what's interesting though, dude, is there's like, and I think people can relate to this in the culture that we live in, where it's like we do live in a hyper rational world and a very science-based world and a very like, well, this is just how things are, and but there's the mystery and all that stuff seems to be kind of getting lost in the sauce for a lot of people. And we live in a culture that like, they are having to find ways to sacrifice. They're having to find ways to feel like they're alive, basically. It's crazy.
I mean, whether in a sacred or secular dimension, like, and this Paul Tillich argues, like, you need sacrifice and you need to find ways to engage in a type of sacrificial engagement. Sports, I think, is a good secular way of doing it, because, like, again, people like sports is a great example for me, because sports is objectively ridiculous. Like, for me as a non-sports person, I literally look at a game of football and I'm looking at some guys trying to get a football to that side of the pitch, and these ones are trying to get the ball to that side of the pitch. Right. I don't get it.
You say as we sit around a chess table.
Yeah, no, that's a good game. Yeah,
that's a good
game. Yeah, but
when the little pieces go over,
you have to move over there. And
but when the humans do it, that's so silly.
But I kind of go like, the reason I think why football and sports is a great example is the reason why it's so valuable is for most kids, they go to say to the football game, maybe their father brings them or something, and they start to sacrifice. They start to sacrifice time. They sacrifice money. They sacrifice energy, and through the continual, what would be the word? But where sedimentation of sacrifice, the game becomes more and more transcendental until, and I know my friends who are into sports just go mental, because the sacrifice of the time they've put in watching their team lose, for example, loads of times, and then eventually they win, and it's purely a great example of how something finite enters into the realm of ultimate concern through the sedimentation of years of sacrifice.
Ultimate concern, that's so you define that the ultimate concern is the thing to which you serve. Like it exists, you know, above everything, like a...
Yeah, it's kind of like, it's not just something that you value highly. It's
you worship it almost.
Yeah. It's what gives you meaning. I would say that's what gives you the meaning of life.
Yeah. I mean, that's I've never heard the term before, so it's very interesting. I mean, maybe we've talked about it, but like that would be different than you would call like a big other that you're performing for to make sure you gain the approval of. The ultimate concern is like, this is my calling.
Yeah, this is it. This is what gives me value. It's not what I would live or die for, because people live and die for ridiculous things. It's what gives my life the value of life. It's what makes life worth living, and it's what makes death valuable, as in, you know, that I would die for.
When I was doing this years ago, this trip on mushrooms, I listened to a song by The Killers called "The Calling." And it was also in that same experience, and I was like, and it probably triggered, my brain was probably like, oh, you're gonna listen to that song? Cool. Well, now you're gonna cry about, you know, everything. But it was a wonderful experience. But yeah, the idea of having something that is, well, do you know what your ultimate concern is?
Yeah.
Or should I tell you? I know what it is.
Oh, what it is. Yeah, I mean, and the trick is everyone has it, I would say. But Paul Tillich, who coined the term very much strongly says that everyone has an ultimate concern. It sometimes takes years to find it. It takes a lot of work to find it.
Yeah, what would you say yours is?
How would I put it into words? I suppose what it's.
I can maybe help you.
Okay, go for it.
Because I think maybe someone on the outside.
It's you. Are you saying it's you?
No.
Is that right? No. Is it me?
Absolutely not. It's me. It's. I think your desire, your ultimate concern would be to free people from the idea that there is a magical key that fits into the lock of life that solves everything, and that the absence of that key is found in everyday experiences.
Yeah, oh, that's very well said. I like that. Yeah. I mean, to put it in a nutshell, you could say my ultimate concern is helping people find their ultimate concern. But I was like, but to be freed from the frenetic pursuit of something they think will work. I'd enjoy the sacrifice itself.
Would you feel like your purpose was fulfilled if you were like, you're going to help somebody find their ultimate concern, but their ultimate concern ended up being like yoga?
Yeah, well, no, if that opens you up to the transcendental dimension, 100%. In fact, here's the thing, forget about me, I don't know what my ultimate concern is, but the thing that Tillich says about ultimate concern, which is good, is that...
It's very interesting to me.
Yeah, your ultimate concern, if it's for something finite, it's demonic. He calls it demonic or idolatrous. If you deny your ultimate concern, you enter into emptiness. But ultimately...
Nailed it.
Yeah, the ultimate concern that is useful, that is good, that is perfect. Perfect's the wrong word.
Yeah.
Is
the thing.
Yeah, the thing is something that's finite in your world, like a cause or a person or whatever, that opens you up to a dimension beyond finitude.
Yeah.
So like justice, love, mercy, grace, something that opens you up beyond. By the way, Simone Weil does this beautifully, right? She has this, we've talked about this before maybe, but not in this way. Simone Weil in Gravity and Grace says, what does the miser lose when he loses his treasure?
Yeah.
And because basically she's reflecting on how if a miser, there's an Aesop fable where the miser loses his treasure, he's very upset. And she says, well, he doesn't lose the treasure because in one sense he never had it. He never spends it. He just counts it. He never spends it. But he's distraught when it's stolen. And what Simone Weil says is this, and you'll like this with your physics, quantum mechanics, because Simone Weil has an idea of desire that is connected to quantum mechanics, which is that human beings need an object that they neither have nor don't have in order to sustain their desire. So what the miser has done is they've created an object or treasure. They don't have it, as in they don't spend it, they don't enjoy it, and they don't not have it. Because it's there, right?
They know it's there.
So but it's an unstable. So it creates a presence-absence indeterminacy, a superpositioning, a quantum superpositioning, right, where they don't have or not have, and that allows them to desire.
That's interesting. Yeah, it is the quantum thing. It is only there if they look at it, basically.
Yeah,
but it's not there in the sense that they're not using it and they're not, buying things and enjoying the wealth that they have. That's very interesting.
It's beautiful, isn't it? It's a really beautiful analogy. It's like a quantum dimension of desire.
The Schrodinger's cat, but it's
of desire.
Bag of money.
Yeah, that's it.
Fun.
And Simone Weil says the only problem with the miser, the main problem, is that the miser has an unstable quantum object. Because it can be stolen and it can be used. So her definition of God, this is really interesting. Yeah. Her definition of God is that thing, that presence that maintains a quantum undecidability between presence and absence that allows for desire.
Okay.
Which is a fascinating definition of God.
I'd have to hear that again or read it.
Well, I'll put it like this. For her, there has to be something that we can neither grasp nor lose that allows us to desire. And that's what Tillich calls ultimate concern. So there's a cause, and say you love the cause of some cause of justice, but there has to be a dimension that you don't grasp. It's always to come. That still you don't quite get it. You're missing that, and so it creates this desire.
Yeah, I wonder. And this, like this whole situation that we're in, not to try to keep, I'm truly not trying to inject
You really want to
current
say,
events, but current events are happening right now
Yeah,
by their
yeah.
very nature. So, but I do think that I've seen, I don't know, like I grew up Republican. I got that whole thing. I got it, and now I'm way more left. But I've felt in this past year that there is a real shiny new object syndrome happening with my peers on the left, where causes and things are all valid and all good, but tend to, with the news cycle, sort of go through this and this and this. And I think that's not necessarily a bad thing. I think you should fight for everything and fight for all of it. But I think also, like, it's indicative of there being a lack of a final, what was the word? Final cause? Final.
Yeah, ultimate concern.
Ultimate concern.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm nervous, right? Because the two dangers in society, I think, are emptiness and demonization. I take that from Paul Tillich. Emptiness is where nothing has value, and you kind of just become melancholic. And then demonization is where you so think you have the truth and the answer that you've got the absolute. So, like, if you think of the miser's treasure, one is you don't have the treasure and you're sad. The other is you do have it. And I worry that, like, so an example of demonization in a secular way is doxing. We talked about this earlier. If you dox somebody, you're so certain that you're right, that you're willing to put someone's personal address and mobile number or whatever online and ask your followers to abuse these people.
There's a whole thing that I saw, this old guy who was a gamer who got doxxed by these people who thought he was like a super, like, senior citizen gamer, and these people thought he was some kind of a pedophile, and he was like the sweetest guy who was not that, and his shit got they effed him up because they, like, exposed, quote unquote, him as this thing that he wasn't, and his life got essentially ruined because these dorks thought they had it all figured out, thought they knew what was up, and they wanted to take it upon themselves to fix the situation. And it's like, how does that end good? How does that end good for anybody?
I know. No, I do think doxing is a secular demonization because
scarlet lettering, right? I mean, you're taking someone and you're going like, well, that's not really scarlet lettering because they're not walking around. But yeah.
Yeah, I actually don't know that phrase. It sounds a cool phrase. I've heard of the phrase scarlet letter, but I don't know what it means.
Well, to speak beyond what I actually know about it, it's based on a book where you wore like an A or something like that on your clothes if you were, like, sexually promiscuous or something like that. If you were some sort of prostitute maybe, but you would wear something where you knew you put on display that you were something, and so it's people finding people and being like putting them on display for them, which is different than it wasn't really relevant.
That's an interesting phrase, but the doxing thing. The reason why it's dangerous for me is Paul Tillich has this beautiful way of describing. He says, right, you have to give yourself to a cause. Absolutely, you all have ultimate concern. That's indubitable. Like but you always have to have doubt about the way that manifests in your life. There is always risk. There's always a chance you're wrong. You always have to be open to discourse. Always have to be open to being the baddie, right? Yeah. And so it's beautiful because there's absolute commitment to a cause alongside the idea that you're risking. You have to doubt. You have to be open to discourse. If you lose that, then you're in idolatry, and that is a danger today.
That's super interesting. Yep, because you find a purpose. I also think there's a temptation to constantly be like, well, everything's 50-50 and everything is, there's two sides to every story and all that, and I feel like that's been used to justify not taking a stand as a weaker version of what I'm getting at, but it's been used as an excuse to not find a ultimate concern. I don't know why I can't get this term in my head. What is ultimate concern?
Ultimate concern.
But like, it's very tempting to. I think people get so concerned with not becoming dogmatic about whatever their ultimate concern is that they never get a chance to sort of fight again and let like iron sharpening iron. But because what you're talking about of like, yeah, you have to be open to becoming the bad guy or the baddie, because inevitably, if you follow anything to its core, you're going to end up being that in certain situations. But that's also how you learn. So how do you, you know?
But this is why, like, and it comes back to you starting off by talking about the book on quantum mechanics, is that this is the equivalent, is that quantum mechanics is not just an interesting theory about physics, it also, or a philosophical theory about reality. It actually has something to say about the very nature of subjectivity and desire. And what Simone Weil offers is, she says we need a quantum indeterminacy about our commitment to the world.
Yeah.
Which means, in Paul Tillich's terms, you give yourself to something, you give yourself to a cause, you find your ultimate concern, and simultaneously you realize that you haven't got it. It's got you, you're grasped by it, but that there's a dimension that you cannot name. This is what the Buddhists say whenever Buddhists say, if you meet the Buddha on the road, kill him. In other words, because if the Buddha ever was fully instantialized, then this would be destructive. The Buddha is, in a sense, always to arrive, always something more. So this is a quantum undecided. Like, you have to have full commitment to something, or a person in love, full commitment to a person, with the idea that this might be the wrong person, it might be terrible, it might end up in a disaster where you're fighting over your kids and wanting to destroy the other person. And you embrace that indeterminacy.
Do you think you can fully embrace something and still hold on to those disclaimers though? Like, if you're going to dive fully into something and be like, this is my ultimate concern, it seems like you're gonna come head first with the bad effects of that eventually, right? Like, otherwise you were never really. It's literally like that faith conversation. It's like, well, if you didn't get healed, you just didn't have enough faith. And it's like, if you have an ultimate concern and you're not in it enough that it generates actual conflict in your life, then like, are you not just sort of being like chill about?
Yeah, well, Tillich would say that, yeah, the two dangers are demonization or emptiness. And demonization is where your ultimate concern, I suppose it basically is like this, right? You give yourself, say, to justice, and you say, right, and I'm going to work, say, in the criminal system, trying to fight injustice with incarcerated people. So you fully commit yourself to that. But you can also say, however, I'm open to, being wrong about the way I see things, learning from other people, listening honestly with what's going on. But yeah, Tillich says the danger of religion is always demonization. And religion, for him, religion is basically symbols that say you have the answer. Like, religion at its best says, here are some symbols that you give yourself to, but that also don't give you what you think. That's why the idea of God in mysticism is always a non-present presence. So in mysticism, you always have a God that both exists and doesn't exist. Atheism and theism intertwined. Every time you name God, it's not God.
Yeah.
So you have to be an atheist about God, and yet every time you don't name God, you're kind of like getting closer to the ground of all being. So yeah, religion at its best for someone like Tillich or Simone Weil offers a language of presence, absence, indeterminacy.
I love all that from what I got from it. That was very good, Pete. I don't know exactly. I didn't follow exactly because my brain's going off in all sorts of directions. But I'm wondering if there's do you think that's possible? I guess would be my question. A religion where you can safely, or not a religion, an ultimate concern where you can safely give yourself over to it wholeheartedly. Because it seems, in my mind, and I don't know if this would align with Tillich, you would find your ultimate concern, whatever it is. It's justice. You do your thing. It's personal hygiene. You give yourself over to personal hygiene. You're going to make sure everybody's got a bar of soap constantly with them. Hand sanitizer for everybody. It doesn't matter. It's beautiful. You give yourself over to it.
Is that your political platform?
It
Hand
is.
sanitizer
Always has
for
been.
Everyone. And gluten for everyone.
Oh, and I was ahead of the curve, yeah. I think you adopt this thing. But wouldn't it be a sort of normal cyclical experience to give yourself over find that it becomes demonic. Is that what you said?
Demonic, yeah.
Yeah, find that it becomes, I have it all right, and those people are all wrong because they don't have hand sanitizer. They're bad. Or hand sanitizer.
I like it. I like this example. Yeah.
There's people who are bad. They don't have it. So that's the demonic side of it. But isn't there something to going, oh, right, I've gone a little too, yeah. And then you just go, okay, you're a human, whatever. Maybe I have my own thing. I got a little too into it. But you can't get there without first going.
No, I get what you're saying, right? But I'm going to argue the opposite. I'm going to say that you can only really understand true sacrifice when you're open to the risk of being wrong. And by that I mean this, right? The ultimate, right?
Well, I get it.
Yeah. Because because the reason why, like in contemporary society, people are always trying to find a romantic way to propose. Because in a sense, the most romantic thing's been stolen away from proposals, which is it's the most ridiculous thing you could ever do. Like you're offering yourself to someone whenever you know you're a bit of a dick. I mean, that's a cruel thing to do. You shouldn't do that to anybody, even someone you hate. But to do that to someone you love is a terrible thing. But also,
that's very funny.
Yeah, thank you. But also, it's I just think it's just true.
It is so funny. Yeah, it's like, guess what?
I want you to tolerate me for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Will you forever be like? Ugh.
Yeah. And also, in addition to that, statistically that it's probably not going to work, right? You look at the statistics of divorce, and even people who don't get divorced who are sleeping in separate bedrooms and hate each other, right? The stats are terrible. Yeah. That's not what robs romance of its romance. That's what gives it its romance. If you say to someone, this is probably not going to work out, you're probably going to hate me, I'm probably going to hate you. In fact, if someone from the future came to me right now with a DVD, or not a DVD, what do you put in the computer? CD-ROMs?
Yeah, CD-ROMs.
But of the very moment when we broke up, 20 years from now, I actually saw it. I actually looked at it on my laptop and I saw it. And I still am asking you, will you marry me?
Yeah, but
that's romantic.
But only if that person means that. If that person doesn't mean that and they're like, I know that like this is going to be really tough, then that's like the dorkiest thing.
But it has to be meant. Yes, it has to be meant.
But if they mean like we're going to be happy, this is going to be the most romantic. I'm going to be the perfect husband. You're going to be the perfect wife. I think there's a sweetness if they naively believe that shit.
It's sweet. It's sweet. But like,
and I will watch with bated breath as the whole thing goes down in flames.
Yes, and that's usually the first time people get married or have a relationship. That's the way they describe it. But it's the same with a battle. If you have a superior force, there's no risk in fighting. There's no real courage. But if you're like a tiny army and you fight, there's more courage. So the argument is that actually giving yourself to a cause wholly and completely without reserve, and yet simultaneously being open to being wrong and open to the horror of that realization, I think, which is sacrifice, right? The sacrifice of giving yourself over to something, and also the sacrifice of realizing you might be wrong, doesn't take away from the commitment. It actually gives it its transcendental dimension.
We're back to the same. I don't know. This is such a funny thing because it's so. I understand it like in a tertiary sense in my brain, but I'm trying to wrap my head around the idea of giving yourself over, and I guess I'm just doubting the human's ability to have I get it. You're upset and you're just you're out of here. Peach just got up and walked away if you're on the audio version. I'm having doubts about the human's ability to consciously be able to distance themselves from the belief that they've got it figured out. Like, why not embrace the idea that you have it all figured out? Embrace the idea that the marriage will be beautiful and allow life itself to surprise you with the realization that, you don't have it all figured out. Like, which I guess is different than the sacrifice. This is more about the ultimate concern thing.
Now, there's nothing wrong with. Well, I was going to say there is
holding it in your lap is a very what?
There is. I was going to say there's nothing wrong with that, but there is something wrong with that. And it's not wrong as in we all do it. I mean, goodness, if you're young, like
I'm talking possible. Like I don't know how you could possibly. But I know I'm also of the brain that I have the shiny new object syndrome that everybody has, where it's like this is the thing, this is the thing, this is the thing. But I would never.
But that's why you need it. That's why we all need a sophisticated symbolic language. I need to put tonic water in that. We all need. You don't. It's a very nice gin, actually. You might not need tonic for it, but there's tonic water right there. You do your own tonic water.
This is what they're talking about, sacrifice.
But this is why, and I don't want to get into all this other stuff, but it is my concern with a lot of modern discourse that it does not have a language that allows us to avoid demonization on one side and emptiness on the other. But there are types of discourse and types of practices that help us do that. That's what we need. That's what we need.
All right. I mean, I can understand a lot of what you're saying. You know what freaked me out when we were watching I watched a lot of the DNC, the Democratic National Convention.
I've heard of it, yeah.
They are pretty cool. And definitely wasn't cringy, and definitely didn't pretend that it was cooler than it was. But no, at one point, I turned to my girlfriend. I was like, "Is this?" I was like, "I know I can be a dick, but this is not good, right?" It's just like, "This is pretty bad."
Oh yeah.
God bless him. But there was a weird language that they used a few times in regard, and I brought this up a little bit with you, this language in regard to science was religious. Like, it was a religious language, but you could literally take the word science out and put God in, and it was still it still had a reverence, a zeal, an ultimate sort of, not concern, but a allegiance to this thing where let science be the guide, and we will bow to science, which I think is great. I love science. I believe in science, okay? But it is curious, the language. It's a very curious way of, I don't know, it just felt strange to me. It felt very like creepy. It just creeped me out a little bit.
Well, I do think, right, and let's throw this out, see what you think, but quietly, this is not quietly because I'm saying it on a podcast, but quietly, I have thought that, so what Tillich says is, he says religions tend towards demonization and what he calls quasi-religions, which is nationalism, socialism, humanism, liberalism, whatever, right? They tend towards emptiness. But he says they tend towards that. But what I would say is we live in a moment in which religions tend towards emptiness and quasi-religions are tending towards demonization. And that there is a religious dimension.
Okay, I see. You're saying emptiness in relation to the Tillich thing. Okay.
Yeah, so there is, within what you're talking about with the DNC and stuff, is I have noticed that there is a profoundly religious dimension to these, and even a conversion similar to the Great Conversion in America in the 1800s. That is, I'm not saying either good or bad. I'm just making a comment.
It's just interesting. Yeah. It's also interesting that it's like, I think the whole believing, the phrase, even the phrase believing in science, that's a very interesting way to put something like that, because it's like, well, okay, you believe in science, but then you see the way they talk about it, and they talk about it in a religious sense, and religion is something that you believe in. So they are going like, this is our God, like this is what we will now bow down and worship. We will now, if you need to come over, you need to accept into your heart the facts or whatever. It all just is the same kind of thing. It feels to me like a weirdly religious movement, but this is also me.
Yes. Mind you, that bit might be, well, I'm trying to think what someone like Tillich would say. Like, he might say like that bit's good because we.
Oh, I think it's actually it's a smart strategy too, to be like. Yes.
But also we all need something that connects us with the transcendental. Whether for the artist it's beauty, for the philosopher truth, for the lawyer justice.
Right, but science isn't that. That's, I guess, my problem is like science. The idea of science has absolutely no moral like imperative. It's literally just empirical data that you use through your senses to make sense of the world around you. It's beautiful.
No, but you can have a transcendental dimension to science, which is, obviously the kind of the pursuit of truth that you never grasp because you're always moving forward. You never get to the final point, but that also drives you. So that could be called transcendental, because
wouldn't you be entering into the it would enter into the what they would call the demonic thing then.
Well, that would be the transcendental. That would be good. The demonic would be if you think science is the only way to gain access to or to unconceal the world. That would be demonic.
There it is. Yep, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Because like the university, in a sense, is like different rooms unconceal the world in different ways. Poetry unconceals the world. Philosophy unconceals the world. Science. So, but if you think that science is the only way in which the world is unconcealed, then that would be a problem.
That's where I get off the wagon. But I think it's also it's proof that people just, I think, need stuff to believe in, and they need something to sacrifice and give their lives over to. And it seems to be in short supply for most people.
Yeah. I mean, I do think, by the way, like, because for the last lot of years, emptiness for me has been the predominant experience of young people, that the swing has been now towards, and it's an understandable swing towards attempting to find meaning through sacrifice.
Yeah.
And the big thing for me, why I wanted to talk about sacrifice, is how do we have ultimate concern, as in how do we have a commitment to the world, sacrifice, without it becoming destructive.
Yeah.
Like in a really violent way. Now, all sacrifice is destructive, but you can have positive sacrifice, positive destruction. You know, because sacrifice is wonderful. I mean, that's why it's spiritual, sexual. It's like, and that's why, you know, like, you know, if you wanna have a great sexual experience, you know, the sacrifice has to be involved, whether it's flowers or killing somebody. It's like there's, you know, you get the more crazy, fucked up, whatever, you know, but that's very destructive. Is you either
Are you confessing something right now? Did you do something? Who'd you kill?
It was a crazy sexual experience.
Spark in your eye.
Yeah. But yeah, it's like the sacrifice has to be there in some way, but it can't become destructive.
Something I've had to come to terms with is in this search of, especially during this time of transition and upheaval, is like, okay, I want to find the thing that I give myself over to, and then I was like, I've hung out with Pete way too much, because I was like, I know that none of any of this like is gonna be like the thing, and not that I'm putting that on you, but I do feel that way. I truly am like, I can see both sides of most situations. I can see both sides, and it's a blessing and a curse. But then I was like, oh, okay, yeah. So I just have to choose something, and I have to accept that I am never going to perhaps 100% believe in things. And I had to like internalize that, because it ended a search in a weird way. I think that I was not realizing I was on, of finding that thing, or that, you know, like that clear answer, I guess. And then in the past few months, it's been like, okay, yeah, no, I feel much more free to have much more fun with like fighting for things and figuring out what my purpose or ultimate concern is, and it's been wonderful. But it did take, as you're saying, it took a certain realization that you have the freedom to pick whatever resonates with you, and to just go apeshit with it, because you probably are going to be wrong, so who cares? Yeah,
that's it. And all of these have a demonic character. So the demonic side of nationalism is fascism. The demonic side of socialism is Stalinism. The demonic side of you know, Christianity is the the Inquisition. The
anima has its animus, and the shadow has its hero.
Don't start that bullshit.
It's crazy that you're saying this type of stuff.
We're gonna have to have a good conversation about that. I'm gonna have to set you straight on that stuff.
I can't wait. Guys, thank you so much for watching. You have to take away. I mean, this has been one heck of a conversation. I don't know what we talked about, but I'm sure I was right, and 100% I was right about everything, and you were wrong about everything. And shame on you for being that way.
Thank you.
And I know you're feeling an emptiness as a result of my demonizing you like that. But what's your anything?
Will we do takeaways?
I don't know. I mean, I have nothing to take away from this.
No, I think we did. The takeaways are all in there if you just listen.
Yeah, it's in the. It's like this podcast episode felt like a bag of popcorn that's going off in the microwave. Or like this.
And you know what?
What do you do?
We're back.
100%. Never gonna miss an episode. Guys, if you're watching this on the Valleycast channel, please subscribe to it, and please leave us a comment and let us know what you're giving your life over to, what your ultimate concern is, what you're sacrificing these days, and if you can relate to what we're talking about, or if you're like, hey, you have no idea what you guys are talking about.
Keep it going, because you know what Viktor Frankl said? In Viktor Frankl would say
I
often.
just made a really, really, really inappropriate joke. So I was glad I didn't. But yeah.
Oh, I wish you had. You have to tell me afterwards.
Would have been an elitist asshole joke to make.
Well, he would often ask a person in therapy, say, why have you not killed yourself? And the reason why he would ask that question at a certain point is because even someone who feels they've got no ultimate concern, they've got nothing, they're whatever, there's a reason why you haven't killed yourself. And that's a good question to begin to ask in order to find your ultimate concern.
We should do a whole... that's what our next episode should be.
That's what was that?
That's what our next episode
Yes.
should be.
Oh, brilliant.
It's going to be half of it is going to be you asking me the question. You let me ramble for 15 minutes. I let you ramble for 15 minutes. And then we figure out what our ultimate concern is.
That's it. Perfect.
How to kill him. Okay. Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Bye.